right, everyone, welcome to Miles and Mindset Tour de France Femmes edition. This is episode 9, the last of 9 episodes with me, Rebecca Rusch, world champion endurance athlete, performance and mindset expert, and my new friend, my new bestie, Brent Bookwalter, former professional road cyclist, performance mindset coach. And we've had a really fun adventure together, hopefully with all of you, during these 9 days of Miles and Mindset, and really talking about the performance, the psychology that the athletes and the teams are going through the lens of the biggest, most exciting cycling event on earth, Tour de France Femmes, avec Zwift. 9 stages, 9 episodes. If you missed some of them, go back, because there's been so many good nuggets that we've been talking about and pulling from the races. And I actually leveraged a couple of those nuggets this morning while I was watching the stage. I went back to when we were talking about motivation and intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. And for the 3rd day in a row in a week, I've ridden my bike on Zwift indoors in my garage, which is totally not like me in the summer, because I find no motivation from riding indoors, no intrinsic motivation from riding indoors. But I had the screen in front of me, the stage was going on. It was such an exciting stage with the GC only 8 seconds apart. And so I rode my heart out, and my training stress score was going up, and I'm sweating alongside it. And so I was actually really thinking about, that extrinsic motivation of seeing the racers, and that just pulled me in, and I forgot the boredom of not going anywhere on a bike. And so I actually was leaning on some of the tools that we've already talked about. And I think that is such a good point for this whole series, is that mindset training is training, and you're never really done with it. Even these best riders in the world that we're watching, we're having to watch them leverage each day. Demi Vollering loses a bunch of time on Mont Ventoux, where Kasia takes the win, and they're going back and forth. And I think for this episode, what Brent and I decided we really want to talk about is your value system. And Brent has talked about his model of excellence, the tree of excellence. And at the roots, at the bottom, the core is your values, your why, your purpose. Why are you there? And having those strong roots, you can get up in the flowers and leaves of the tree, but ultimately, if you don't have the strong roots of your values and why you're there, it makes it hard for the tree to stand up. So I thought after wrapping this week, we could kind of talk about, Brent, how literally every day, all these riders came in with big dreams and big hopes, and some achieved them, many did not. Even teams' goals were shifting every day. GC goals, are still there, or a rider wants to take a stage, they don't take a stage. Many riders are sick and they drop out, so they haven't even completed the whole entire tour. So there's this whole shifting of maybe what your goals and dreams were. But so how does somebody come back from that? In the middle of the race, they're thinking about, and we talked to our team, Saint-Michel, Preference Home, over 93. On yesterday's episode, I got to actually speak to the team live over there, and man, I could see the fatigue. Allison Jackson talked about how she had goals for a stage win, and it really wasn't happening. And I gave her a little bit of a pep talk. But so can you kind of touch in from a psychology basis of when things just don't seem like they're going well, you're on the last stage, you're about to reflect on this whole experience. Do you come back to why you're there in the first place? What's the mindset happening when it's just not going as you wanted?
Right. Yeah. Good question, Rebecca. And I think that question really, as you come out of a race like the Tour de France, a stage race, a Grand Tour, it's important to recognize that question is not going to be answered in one moment, in one day or 1 week. This is the process of evolution and progression and continuation. And that's one of the hardest parts about finishing these races, is we push so hard to just go to the finish line, go to the end, and we think it's all done then. But that's the winner's fallacy, or the finisher's fallacy, or that's the misconception about reaching these new heights or just getting to the end of the race, is that nothing really changes, about us or the world. And what we do from that does come back to what really is important to us. And this process takes a while after a race. I think this post stage race, post Grand Tour blues or depression is a real thing that I think everyone to some extent suffers from. I think the winners probably less immediately because they're the ones that have sort of accomplished and achieved and executed how they want to. They're kind of riding that high a little bit for anyone who's even just finished just to get through of it. But whether it's the ones that are finishing with a bad taste in their mouth and they wanted more, maybe it hits them right away. Maybe the winners after the celebration parties and the tour of celebrations in the hometown, kind of wears off. Maybe it hits them then. But yeah, it's a time to go back to those roots, keep those people around us that are really close and have helped us build those, sort through those. And then I think not just in terms of like racing values and purpose and career, but also values for your overall like just health and well-being. I think for me, finishing a Grand Tour and a stage race, it was just really important that I just keep moving my body because no matter what day it was, I was always riding a wave and I would feel depressed, I'd feel down, I'd feel excited, I'd feel relieved, I'd feel grateful, just riding the wave. But the one constant that I knew I always needed was just to keep moving in some aspect. And the physical movement helped me also feel like I was still moving forward with my values, with progression, with learning. So yeah, it's not one moment in time. Just like getting to the race doesn't exactly change what's important to us, or it doesn't change who we are. Now is as good of a time to ever to go back to those roots and do some work on them and figure out what we do next.
Yeah, I love that you kind of said, because there is, once anyone who experiences any really big event, it could even be your
Hmm.
wedding or something
Yes.
where there's a ton of emotion, there's a ton of energy that's put into this experience, and then it's done. And you're like, whoa. Like I've definitely
Yeah, that's it.
had
Ugh.
experience racing too, because you're like, my life has been so focused, so intense, and then it's not on
Yeah.
this one goal. And that's a very real thing. So anyone who, who has worked towards a big goal, gotten through it on the other side of it, if you're feeling kind of that depression or feeling kind of down or like what's next, that is super common. And I love that you talked about literally just getting moving. Just go on a ride with your friends on a bike, because movement really is medicine. It releases all sorts of, neurochemicals, hormones. It's good for your brain. It's good for your body. So that's always been something too that I've sort of had to dig myself out and be like, okay, I'm just going to get outside. And through my concussion recovery too, it's like every time I moved, I felt better. And
Yes.
so it is normal to kind of have a come down after something that's so intense and so emotional. There's been a few moments here that, one, I just have to say the racing has been so inspiring and so exciting, and every day has been like really unpredictable. And I want to highlight a couple of things, when we're talking about values and goals. Kasia Niewiadoma, obviously she took the yellow on Ventoux and then ended up in the, tried to make an attack today, 8 seconds apart. She was very aggressive. She got the most combative rider for stage 9 because she really was going for it the whole way. She didn't take the win. She got second. Demi rode away from her in stunning fashion, but Kasia was just gritty and fighting till the end. And what you saw at the finish line, just in the little interviews and things, and even the beginning of today's stage, she was smiling, she was joyful. She's like, it's going to be a real battle today. And she's smiling as she's saying it. And at the finish, she's hugging her teammates and smiling and congratulating Demi. And like, she truly looked joyful, even though she obviously was going, her main goal was to try to win the whole tour. And she didn't achieve that. But yet, you could tell she loves riding her bike and she was going to fight for it. And that, I think, I don't know her, but from her presentation, it looks like she's just really proud of how she rode, as she should be. It was just stunning. And so
Yes.
I also think it's important to see like how our heroes, carry themselves in the face
Mhm.
of disappointment. Of course, she's
Yep.
disappointed, but
Yep.
yeah, they were all talking. I saw a lot of riders hanging out together, and I think it's really good sportsmanship. It's like amazing, probably something that you will share with your daughters and your kids
Yes.
and be like,
Yes.
yeah, you need to watch this.
I
And
love it.
yeah, it was just super cool. And then even Demi on the podium, you know, she's obviously thanking her team and stuff, but and it is kind of her moment. And what she said at the end, you know, her final statement was like, you know, don't forget to dream, don't be afraid to dream. And so hopefully, you know, for anyone listening, they're like, we're never going to race the you're never going to race the Tour de France.
Yeah.
I'm never going to race Tour de France Femme. But that was just like, oh yeah, like very
Inspiring.
inspiring for me. And to see some of these heroes, even though they're like battling it so hard, they still really love riding her bike. And she also said, somebody asked, oh, do you have other dreams? You know, and she's like, yeah, I have other dreams.
Yeah.
And on and off the bike.
Right.
I also thought that that was pretty great because, I mean, sport is such a great lens. It's part of what we're doing here with Miles and Mindset. Sport is the best lens, the best arena for us to practice how to be a strong, resilient, good human being, you know, from every level, from the recreational level to the very, very elite. Is like, I mean, I'm curious, if you hadn't been an athlete, like,
Mm.
you would have missed out on learning a lot of your life skills.
Yeah, these women were a prime example of that. I think that those two prime examples, looking at the top 1, 2 in Vollering and Niewiadoma, they both really were, especially the second half of these race. Their lived values, what's important to them in action. When Kasia talked about, even when she won on Von 2, I love the quote that she actually has never done it to win or like to stand on top of the podium or to get the contract. It's about that feeling of putting it together and knowing who's behind her and really the work that goes into it too. And really a lot of similarities, as different as they are, between Vollering and her sort of victory speech there today as well. So yeah, tons of inspiration to pull out. And yeah, I think I wish we could get more. I would love to go through the women's peloton and get basically like Vollering's sort of like finish line speech, like out of all of them. And they obviously all wouldn't be tears of joy and elation. There'd be some disappointment and some heartbreak. But yeah, so many different individual stories being carried out. And I think any athlete who has made it to this level, that has risen to this level, they've already done a lot of work. You don't get through a race like the women's tour without a lot of suffering, and you can't endure without really understanding and articulating and being values aligned. So the tricky thing for me is when the race finishes is almost, I think for me as an athlete, it was actually harder than racing and living values aligned in competition. It was harder to do it sort of off the bike in the transition, because there's not anything to like grab a hold of as firmly. It wasn't about willing myself forward and being able to push on the pedals harder, and also just the feedback that we get that's all around us. So I think, yeah, in the spirit of that transition, connecting what comes next to those values to what's important to us, I think considering our environment that's around us and building some feedback systems, because the big sort of detox of all the constant feedback from the circus of the Tour de France to, you know, beautiful, simple, so much calmer life at home, is also very challenging. And for it to happen, for it to move through it sort of like accidentally, it's less likely it's going to happen accidentally than if we actually, take matters into our own hands once again and design that feedback system and work through it a little more methodically.
You're making me laugh because you're talking about going back to your normal, simple life. I remember the first year I won the Leadville 100, and it was really like my first big win as a cyclist, like that, of a race that was known. And all of a sudden I'm like, you know, in the media and all this. And literally like on the Monday after, I was cleaning my toilets at home, and I texted my friend. I'm like, you know, Leadville champion, all this. I'm like, do you think the men's champion is cleaning his toilet right now? Or it was just kind of a funny reflection of like, yeah, I mean, yes, that happens. You have your podium, you have your exciting moment, and then you go back to your life.
Absolutely.
Back to cleaning your toilets.
Yep. Right.
And there's so felicity in a race. And this is why I love for people to race. You start, you finish, you go as hard as you can in the middle. And it is a very focused, clean way to practice strength and resilience and all this kind of stuff. And then, yeah, you get back to the noise of your life and suddenly you don't have that. Drawing that kind of focus is actually harder, I think, when you're in your regular life. I want to talk about some of these athletes post race now who maybe aren't seeing the silver lining, or they're kind of like, "Wow, I had a really disappointing week, and what I sort of went in and was dreaming about didn't happen." And especially, you're the mindset coach for Caroline Resin, with Alan Lim's performance team that we're part of. So you'll be debriefing with Caroline. So what about these athletes or anyone who's like set out, they dream big, they shoot for the moon, they don't quite make it? How do we process the disappointment and then move into the future and keep going? What is your strategy for that as a coach?
So once again, we need a deliberate process of reflecting, of working through it. I think allotting time to feel all the feels, the riding the wave of excitement, of pride, of frustration, of disappointment, of pain, of nervousness, of unknown. Like we have to give ourselves a chance to live some of all that. But then also like drawing time on the phase of reflection. So sort of the acute, those big feels, drawing some time and a line on it and saying, all right, well, we did that, but now we're going to move on. Now we're going to look forward. And it's a lot of the basic questions we ask ourselves day to day. It's like, what went well? What didn't go well? What was in our control? What wasn't? And then in terms of moving forward, once again, just like we did during the race, breaking it down into really small chunks of what we can control. So what is the vision for the rest of our season? How does that connect to next year? What are the goals, micro goals? So like process, performance, outcome goals that are going to bring that vision to life. And then once again, the values connect into there, and we start working at it one day at a time. And acutely or initially, this is probably mostly about recovery, and then it's going to switch eventually to a little more performance for the rest of this year, next year. The other thing that I think is important is this well-being factor, and knowing that this sort of post-race sort of like slump or depression or blues is real after anything that's so grandiose that we did and put ourselves into. One of the psychological theories that I like and learned about from the realm of positive psychology and Dr. Marty Seligman is the PERMA theory of well-being. And PERMA is an acronym for positive emotions and joy. E is for engagement, R is relationships, M is meaning, and then A is accomplishment. And there's great positive psychology research done in support of this theory of human flourishing. And referencing what I learned there back to my own career and how I went through maybe some of these moments, for better and for worse, I was able to connect some nice dots, sort of, and thinking like, wow, if I've neglected, 4 out of 5 of these areas of PERMA, yeah, that usually is when I was really struggling, having a hard time, having a difficult time moving on, and was not flourishing, level well-being quite low. So I don't bring this up and I don't use it with athletes in a real mechanical scientific sense, but I use it in a sort of like a broad, consistently scanning, and in terms of like how I'm asking questions, getting them to reflect, like, are you finding some joy now? Like, are you just like doing something that's fun? Like, let's just like, just like ride, like get on a swing and feel the air in your face and like, have a good time for a second. And on the other end of the PERMA acronym, accomplishment, the race is done now. Yeah. So let's step away from some accomplishment on the bike, but like, let's just make some little accomplishment ticks in other areas of our lives, working around the house. Maybe it's even cleaning that toilet, like you said, Rebecca, and feeling accomplished about that. But all these little things, they do kind of build into supporting athletes with well-being in these times of transition out of a big race.
I don't know how much joy or accomplishment I felt in,
I feel accomplished if I clean it.
but it had to be done. There is some satisfaction. You're like, okay, the house is clean.
To-do list, right? Yeah.
I love that you said joy, because this really resonates with me. There's, through this concussion recovery or certain times where it was very intense racing, I've lost track of joy, and I lost track of that value of, I just love my bike. And
Hmm.
that's something I'm focusing on now, of like a lot less structure, you know, which is why it's so funny. I was on Zwift for 3 times
The opposite.
the opposite, but it was joyful. So it
Yeah.
was actually, it's such an important metric to actually look at, especially for people that are training really hard and they've got a coach. It's very intense. You can lose track of some of those other factors, like you said. And
Hmm.
I want to touch on the accomplishment in other areas as well, because this was something that when I did get to talk to the team uh last night before stage 9, there was even Alan Lim, the Dr. Alan Lim, who's like there as part of the performance team. Everybody was a little deflated and everybody was sort of so like in their own little zone. I was reminded
Mm,
them how the rest of the world is so inspired by this race and so excited for them, and all the people
yeah.
cheering on the side of the road, and like the circuit race today that just had people lining the whole thing. And so I was trying to, give a little glimpse that maybe, Caroline can process later, they can process later, of how they're changing the face of women's sport, and not just changing their future and their growth, but growth
Yeah.
of the sport as a whole. And I had to remind Alan of that. Like, you're in the thick of it, but this stuff really
Yeah.
matters. I will be excited. I think a couple of things to pull on that you talked about. It takes a little time to be able to
Hmm.
reel back and reflect with maybe honesty instead of just emotion and fatigue. So
Hmm.
it takes time to process something this big. And so I look forward to how you're going to help coach Caroline on it. And I will give her a shout out. She went into this race, only her second Grand Tour ever in her young cycling career, and her goal was to finish, and she did it. She finished every single stage. So,
Bravo.
you guys
Very
are going
proud
to
of
have.
Caroline. Lots to be proud of. And I think that perspective, I think, often takes time too. It is an interesting dynamic having raced the men's Tour de France as well. There's moments even during the men's tour where you're in kind of a dumpy hotel and there isn't the fanfare and you don't feel like you're attached to any sort of like meaning. And it's just kind of like grim suffering. Like, what are we even doing here? And I think, even like watching some of the stages back, like, yeah, sort of like scanning some of the media through the race, like connecting with those friends back home, hearing their interpretation of it. Like, yeah, I think there's all these young aspiring women cyclists and men's too cyclists for that matter, all around the world that are watching the race this past week, that are inspired, that are motivated, that are now dreaming more. And yeah, curiosity is peaked, and that's there's a lot of impact in there. So yeah, lots of positive to celebrate, and also like always more work to be done too. But yeah, that's never done, and the journey continues.
Well, this can be our job for all of those athletes and teams who put in 9 really big days. Our job is to go on their social media, give them high
Hype
fives,
them up.
tell them how much you loved watching the racing. I have to say,
Yeah,
props to Zwift for continuing to push women's sport forward. Canyon SRAM has always been in there. There's a lot of teams that are really, and brands that are really committing to women's sport, and it's so exciting to see. So our job is to pump these athletes up, tell them how much you loved watching them race. I know I'm gonna miss these last 9 days, and especially spending time with you, Brent, has been
likewise, Rebecca.
fun. For those of you listening, this is not the end of Miles and Mindset. It's actually just the beginning. This was our first series with the Tour de France Femmes, avec Zwift, but Brent and I have plans to do more. We are going to drop more Miles and Mindset episodes. You can go back to both our YouTubes and check it out. And our goal is to get you all out on bikes, performing well, performing at your best, and to really leverage your mind as your best tool. Even Demi Vollering on the finish line, she like pointed to her head and
Love
talked about
it.
mindset. So it's such a powerful tool, and to use, even more powerful, I think, than our heart, our legs, our lungs, is that mind. So I hope you'll keep joining us for these. I do also want to, as I said earlier, racing is the best way to practice this stuff. So anyone listening, you have an invitation to Rebecca's Private Idaho, September 9th through 12th. I'm going to drop a Miles and Mindset discount code in the notes here. So please come ride with me. It would be super fun, and we can chat on the bike. Brent, how about you wrap us up here? 9 days of talking about sports psychology. How do we end this? What's your big take? How do you get
Yeah,
everybody off onto their bikes?
good question. I think this was nicely said, Rebecca. It was a pleasure to do it with you. And I think, yeah, this is not a finish. Like you said, we're not done here doing Miles and Mindsets, and the journey of performance, the journey of well-being, the journey of excellence. It never stops. And when we think we're up on a little ledge, or we think we're on a peak, or we think we're down in the hole, it's just one moment along the path and along the way. And the role of the mind, the role of teamwork in bringing that together and realize that, and moving along in this journey is what I love doing. I love working at it. I love sharing it. It's been a pleasure to work with you, and a pleasure to connect with others that are following the race and tie it all together. So thanks for being a spectacular host and co-host and partner in this, Rebecca, and we'll look forward to doing more.
We've had our own little race within the race, just getting these out. So, yeah, thanks, Brent. That was super fun. Thanks to all of you for being here. Give us a like, give us a comment, and yeah, keep tuning into Miles and Mindset. And hopefully I'll see you in Idaho here in September coming up. And Brent is off to Belgium, right, to do some mindset coaching with the USA Cycling track team. So
that's right.
That's awesome. Well, you can report back. Safe travels, and thanks everyone for being here.